I'm soaked.
Oh, you already set on there?
All you got to do is hit the camera and ready to go.
You need Wi-Fi, right? Do you not need Wi-Fi?
I got 4G. I got enough 4G for me, you, and everybody.
So.
There we go. We're live. We're live. It's already on there. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Whatever it is.
It's raining.
It's raining. It's a beautiful day. We are in the historic downtown building that'll soon be the African American Center. What a beautiful place to do a live interview with Councilman Doherty and Ezra Johnson on a Sunday and in a historical building. So as you guys know, we've had conversations before with aldermen and alderwomen, and this is just another conversation in the series to try to understand where everybody is and get to know your councilmen and where they stand on some issues. So, stay with us and we'll get to moving, and I'll let everybody introduce themselves, let them tell you a little bit about who they are, and we'll move right into the interview.
Cool. Well, hey guys, I'm Kevin. I'm sure most of you know who I am. If you don't, I live in Ward 4, and I represent Ward 4 on the Common Council. I'm kind of one of the more controversial aldermen in the playing field, and just from all the different aspects of things that I do to just representing the community. So, and I appreciate you guys having me here today. So as Dan said, this is the oldest building in Olean. In 1837, they rolled it here. In 1882, after a tornado touched down on this corner and took out the lumber mill that was here, which is kind of cool. Yeah, in 1862, so 20 years later, they rolled it here and sold it to the Christian Scientists. So, and it still stands. So with some minor work that we still are working on. So for Della, So
that's nice.
Oh, yeah. I'm Ezra Johnson. I lived here my whole life. Just here to see how I can help my community out. See where that goes.
All right. With that, guys, we'll roll in, and anybody who's seen the video before knows I have a standard set of questions we'll start out with for the aldermen and alder ladies to give everybody, the same questions. So, and then we'll get into some more deeper conversations. So Alderman Doherty, when you first seen the tape of Floyd's lynching, what was your first thoughts?
My first thoughts are there's a lot of things wrong with America, and that we need to make some changes. At the same time, I also think man, I'm glad that my parents raised me better than that, and that a lot of times I don't see stuff like that because of the color of my skin, and also that I don't think that way. A lot of people. I've seen a lot of this recently is the two inverses, the all fists up, and this is where we want to be, and then there's the white fist up by itself, and this is where we are. And I don't see it as this is where we are. I only see the world as all the fists are raised at the same level, and that's really where maybe that I never noticed a problem because I just see it that way. And so for me to say Black Lives Matter, for example, I didn't think I had to say it because I'm not the person that needs to say it. I think it's really the other people out there that think, that the white fist should be higher or whatever that they might be thinking, and I think that those people really need to be saying it more than the rest of us. But I have no problem, you know what I mean? And I don't know. I think that's kind of where I fall into the movement and wherever I can help.
All right. When you seen the marches in the city of Olean, what was your first thoughts when you seen everybody come together and everybody kind of, gathering and marching for change, systematic change? As a councilman, what was your first initial thought when you seen that?
Well, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. The mainstream media actually had brainwashed a lot of us, and so my first thought was, I hope we can be peaceful. That was my first and most thought, and then. Obviously, I coordinated with Della, and we had a stand here at the corner to kind of just remind everybody we held peace, love, and harmony signs, just to be, to hold the line. So.
So getting to the city of Olean took a pretty big step in putting forth a resolution at the Common Council meeting in support of Black Lives Matter, in support of a more diverse committee to represent the city. You were a yes vote on that, and we didn't know whether you were going to be a yes vote from the opening statement, but you ended up being a yes vote. Can you tell me a little bit about what your thought process going into that vote was?
Sure. Yeah. I wanted clarification. I wanted to make sure that we were supporting the Black Lives Matter movement, right? Like, because Black Lives Matter, as do all lives. That's the purpose, right? To create awareness that Black lives also matter, right? Like, that's because, and from what I'm getting from like not being in the movement to begin with was the whole, the aspect that it's a lot of people's understanding that Black lives didn't matter prior to this movement. So I wanted to make sure we're supporting the movement and not an organization. At a national level, there's a lot of people that it's like storm clouds. Like they're all kind of floating independently under the same umbrella of the atmosphere, kind of just saying, "Hey, this is what we are. This is what we are." And I didn't want to support the organization. I wanted to support the movement because there's certain people protesting peacefully, which I'll support those people, but I'm not supporting the people that are burning down Targets and all sorts of box stores and mom and pop shops and bodegas and all these little like local grocery stores and stuff to try to prove a point, and the rioting and all that. And that's kind of what I wanted to make sure that as a council member supporting like a government entity and my community, that we weren't supporting like violence and rioting, that we were supporting the actual movement to promote people to understand that Black Lives Matter as we all matter.
More on the lines of supporting the actual morals of
Correct.
Black Lives Matter, where it's equal justice for everybody and things like that. You were more behind the movement than you were some of the action.
Correct. Yeah, like
Antifa?
Yeah, the Antifa people. There's all these conspiracies that there's people out there trying to do. You know what I mean? That they're trying to create rioting, all this other stuff. I used this example in the meeting, which was you can be Catholic but not be part of a church, right? Like the local church, maybe the local church has some felonious activities. Maybe there's a lady robbing the books, or there's a priest that's doing some unspeakable things to children. You can say, I'm distancing myself from these people, this organization, but I believe all the tenets in which they believe.
I'd agree. I think that, I'm with you. Like, I'm not for rioting. Like, I don't think people, but I understand it. You know what I mean? I think that the issue is that people look at the mainstream media and see that kind of stuff, and that's where a lot of the things come from. But honestly, I'm one of those people that strongly believe that you can't have something peacefully without something that is a form of riot.
Sure.
If you want change, because some people aren't going to just openly just be okay with change. And Olean, it's a little bit easier. That vote got passed because people understood the bigger picture of it. But some places aren't going to be as easy to infiltrate change without a form of these people want change, and this is look what their actions are showing.
Actions speak louder than words, right? Kind of like during the civil rights movement when the Black Panthers popped up, and they were more kind of militant, and then you had Martin, who was defending his point, very peaceful, civil, very Gandhi-esque, in that you know what I mean. We're going to do sit-ins and.
But I also think when Dr. King was marching, I know him and Malcolm were close involved with each other.
Right.
May not be in the picture of the media and stuff, but they were still together. You know what I mean? Right. And I think that Dr. King still understood there was another side of a protest to it.
Sure.
I'm not trying to get you to be rioting's fine. But
well, no. At the same time, no, I get it. No, because there's frustration out there too.
I said this at the meeting the other night when I was talking to Pastor Wesley. I said that Bishop T.D. Jakes had said, freedom has always been a bloody business. And then I explained to him the Boston Tea Party,
right?
That's a form of rioting, but it was okay for white people to do it back then to get freedom from the British, but now black people have been oppressed for years due to like the new Jim Crow law of the war on drugs, but that's like a story for another time. But people are just fed up, I think, you know what I mean? I'm thankful that we don't have rioting in Olean, happy. But I'm glad that people are willing to listen and understand what the issues are and starting to see what the issue is.
I think that's a big thing, especially in the city of Olean. I think that you can start to see, not everybody, but a lot of people start to really understand what the end goal is. I don't think a lot of people know how to get there, but they'll say to you, "We understand where you want to go."
Right.
That makes sense. So, New York State and Governor Cuomo has been very progressive on police reform. Woo! We got some lightning.
Oh, yeah.
So
bring on the thunder.
New York State's been very progressive on the police reform bill. Governor Cuomo has really pushed out some legislation, 50A, which is the release of the police records, police reform committees, demanding cities to listen to their community and make police and make reforms based on what the community wants and not necessarily so much of what, you know, one size fits all type of mentality. What's your thoughts on that and everything? Like, kind of what the governor's done up to this point as a councilman?
So I got to start by saying I'm not a huge fan of the governor. Aside from this, right? Like, so the governor, I don't know, every time I turn around, he's the typical politician. He's firing from the hip based on emotional responses and things like that, and then never waste a good crisis, right? So there's a pandemic going on, and so he's allowing decent things that, you know what I mean, that makes the community happy by like making every municipality and community review their police boards. He's attacking like the local bars and restaurants and establishments on their other things. So like I'm not condoning everything that the governor does. I'm not a huge fan of him. Actually, I was planning on doing a podcast the next couple of days to rant against him, but no, I think that I think that him putting a boot in the ass of most of the big stuffy white politicians, we know, like the mayor of Olean, and I'm sure other municipalities are doing that. To actually make them get off their asses and do something is actually very formidable. And so I think it's a good thing to review it and actually have a committee. Now, like I said to Ezra after the last town hall meeting, which you start delving into some of the details, though. Like, you create a committee with community members on it. Like, who picks the community members? What community members are on it? What power does the board have? What do they do? Or is it just all lip service? And the governor kind of, because the governor's full of those like blanks. He shoots a gunshot, you hear it, and you see no action. And that's kind of what.
Well, I think when.
No, you go for it.
I think like Danny has said this a couple of times. He told us to start with a blank sheet of paper and start there. So like, but I think where we're missing the point is and thanks to Bill for having the town hall meetings to get people involved in it. But he's actually like taking the time that he's going to meet with us. I think Tuesday. I think it is Wednesday. But like, I think that you can't just come at it one-sided. You have to have everybody involved in that. You know what I mean? You like, and to the police chief, like, he needs to be involved in it.
Sure.
The community members that are actually saying things and acknowledging the problems need to be involved in it. It needs to be diverse, because like every day we look out in Olean and it doesn't look like me and Danny like patrolling the streets, or at the fire department level, or at the like out working in the city streets. It needs to be diverse. It needs different things, but it's not for us to make that decision. It's up to you guys up there to see that the issue's there. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think that we have a problem with DePaulo in there saying like there's not a problem, and then not acknowledging that. So like, how do you work with something like that when you can't even see the issue? Like, how do you go into it with the same idea to create change for the better and then move forward. So that's where where I think when forming the committee, like we all have to agree on like one common thing and build off of that.
Sure.
And we'll get into some of the committee discussions later, like after we get to these like standard things. We'll talk a little bit about what's on the agenda for Tuesday. There's a diversity type of committee vote on there, and you know.
And that's like you and I talked about that. This coming Tuesday is a committee meeting, not a council meeting.
Right.
And so I have to keep checking my schedule because this would be the third Tuesday of the month.
Yeah.
Right. So this is a committee. The second and fourth are council meetings, and then that following Tuesday would be the first, which would be another committee. So yeah. So it'll be a committee meeting. We'll have it in the council chambers. So that all of them are open to the public.
I'll be there.
Yeah, the downside to committee meetings is there is no forum for open discussion.
Right.
You know, a lot of times if hey, we're talking about trap neuter release, for example, right? So you got a lady that's there and she's got concerns from her neighborhood and she's one of two people in the room. Like, yeah, we're going to hear her opinion.
Right.
But when you've got a room full of people, like a lot of times it doesn't give you the mechanism for us to discuss something and then have 50 people speak.
Right.
So. And then to your point of Ron DiPolito, I know he's a hot button issue right now, right? So,
He makes himself a hot button issue.
He does.
I don't know what else to say about that.
So Ron's old school, and Ron also he's not old school in like Jim Crow laws are old school. I think he might be an obstacle for your movement, but at the same time, I think Ron is in line with where I am. Was we kind of viewed it as like all the fists are in line, so he doesn't see a problem, and his stubbornness might be perceived as racist. And I don't think
he's a racist. I think he's a bigot.
Okay.
And my aunt said at the town hall meetings, like before, she said that she's a white lady. They quoted her in the paper for saying this, but they didn't acknowledge that she was white. She said that all like white people have some sort of prejudice attached to them, no matter what. She has black kids and still feels that way. So just to be like, I don't have those kind of thoughts in my head. Like, I mean, everybody has them. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I have bigoted statements in my head towards white people at times. When I have white kids, I have a white wife. Like,
right.
I have those same issues. Like, it works for everybody.
With Ron, my take on Ron, and I don't want to make this a Ron DiPolito discussion.
Yeah.
We're going to have a separate road.
because Ron can sit down and talk with me anytime he wants. I'd be more open to that conversation. But my issue with Ron is that Ron doesn't seem to be able to communicate at all. And when the resolution was brought up, I understood why. I didn't understand why, but he took the position he took, and okay, we'll live with that, right? That's your position. But as the days went on, instead of like you guys trying to explain why you took the positions that you guys took in the opening, right, and make everybody try to understand where you were coming from a thought process, he actually basically said to the community, I don't give a damn what you think. Like at the town hall meeting the other day, somebody asked him when his term was up. He told him, go look it up. Like,
yeah, no, I know.
You know, I mean, how do you back somebody like? I mean, how do you say to yourself, like, as a community person, like, this is a guy that we can sit down and work with.
Right. No, and I hear you. And Ron was a selected official.
Yeah.
Right. So,
which is another funny thing too. I don't know.
So no, actually, so he would live out Nate Smith's terms. There's a lot of misconception about that. A lot of people think that he's up this November.
No.
At the next election, he's there. He'll be campaigning if he were to run. Right. Obviously, unless there's another candidate, he would run in February because of the whole early voting. February, March, around St. Patty's Days when you have to have your petitions in. It used to be like 4th of July, you had your petitions in.
And we're going to have
primaries.
a whole education series on that, guys, because that whole system has changed and it's all moved up.
Someone doesn't know you're live.
The problem is you can't go airplane mode with that, can you?
I don't think so, because you need to.
No. That would be my mother, everybody. So we'll have a whole series on the whole.
And if you guys ever need me to sit down with that like kind of stuff, like I've been I get into a system and I'm like, photographic memory and stuff, I can't forget stuff, right? Like, and it's not like in a good or bad way. It just, like, you teach me something. As an adult, I've learned that I'm doing it more. Like, as a kid, you're like, I don't want to be in history class. I don't remember about the Boston Tea Party as much as, somebody who read it yesterday. Like, but when I've been picking up stuff in the last, like, 5-10 years, and it's like everything sticks with me. So, like, a lot of times I got into politics, I knew all the old rules, and now I knew all the new rules because I have to live and play by these rules. And it's like, you catch somebody playing in a dart league. They know all the different rules. Like, nope, this guy can't sub in. Like, this can't happen. Nope, teams can't swap middle of the section.
Well, I can tell you, like, when we get ready to put that series out, we'll be pulling in local officials because you guys know the business.
Yeah.
And that's who better to talk to than the people who know the business.
Oh yeah.
As far as deadlines and time frames and what needs to be done and things like that.
And every year, I'm a public notary too. So every year, I'm always walking the ward to get signatures for everybody. And so like I mentioned to Ty and other people in the ward. I actually ran into a guy in Ward 6 last week who I got his signature when he lived in Ward 3 because a lot of other politicians will go on vacation. Like, I'm a workaholic, so I'm never on vacation. So I'm always out passing signatures and stuff. So I meet a lot of people in other wards and stuff like that just because I walk them every year, regardless of what season it is, if I'm up for election, so.
It'd be a nice conversation to have.
Oh, yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what changes would you like to see the city make based on what you've heard from the community? Like, give me like your top 3 list of, based on what you've heard from the community, what you've observed. What are the top 3 things that you think that the city could change for the better?
From what I've heard, even just town hall meetings and the council meetings, I've heard that people want to see, they want to see more police presence. Like in a community enforcement way, right? Less like, hey, cops showing up in bad neighborhoods, right? Which obviously, systemically, if you have a neighborhood where you've got like 4 repeat offenders, obviously the cops are going to patrol reasonably through those neighborhoods, but they're looking for more like cops to move through the other ones, the nicer neighborhoods. You know what I mean? The places where maybe the cops don't have to go, have a domestic violence case every other day. Maybe it's just like you come down like. On our block, we live through 200 blocks of Sullivan Street right up there. So I mean, like, you see the cops pass there because it's a commerce route. You never see them walking. And there's a lot of like nice families, nice kids up in there, and like Oak Hill Park's right around the corner. I never see them walking through the park.
I think the police would like that too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Honestly,
builds camaraderie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can tell you, I grew up in South Olean, and I don't make any. I don't hide that from anybody. I grew up. I wasn't privileged, far from privileged. Kid, but I grew up here, and I tell you, in the 90s, I think I said this at the Common Council meeting, I could guarantee I'd see 1 or 3 cops every day. I had 3 cops that were assigned to the beat,
just walking the beat,
and it wasn't the best neighborhood to live in. I mean, they were down there arresting people every day, for different things, but they were always walking the beat, and what you found was they became ingrained into the community, right, as community members. And when there was conflict, it was less conflict because they had a one-on-one relationship with the people that lived in the community. So they were able to say to somebody, hey, come here, let's talk about what happened last night. Right? And then, if they had to make an arrest, they made an arrest. But at the same time, it was more of a relationship type of thing.
Sure.
And everybody knows what Franchot was like back in the 90s. I grew up down there. I grew up in that park. I can't tell you the amount of officers that were in that park on a daily basis, hanging out with the people and talking to them and with the kids and everything else. And yeah, it was a little rough park to grow up in, but I'll tell you, it was a beautiful thing just to watch them down there. So, it's really that type of community policing that you're looking for. It's a relationship.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And that gives the police something better to go off of too, because you say, listen, I'm going to talk to, I'm going to talk to Joe over here because Joe seems to watch everything that's going on, and Joe seems to be a reliable guy. Versus you got, crazy old Nancy, and she kind of like sees everything half-assed backwards, and she, she might have like, wow, it's all them, and then she points out a different minority and just kind of skews the story, and the cops can kind of discern that, right? Like, and then by them walking the beat too, they also have that nice. The nice idea of like reminder why they're serving their community. It's these people. It's that young kid playing basketball over there. It's that dad teaching his kid how to ride the bike down the street. You know what I mean? Things like that. Those are the people I'm defending it to. And then guy pulls a gun out, right? Like that's the guy. That's the predator. That's the guy I have to defend my community against. And it reminds them why they're doing it. And it also prevents less stress and depression amongst officers and stuff like that. A lot of those things are good for that because then when they, when your job is less stressful, you get in an argument with the missus before you go to work, or the hubby before you go to work, and next thing you know, you blow up on the job, like, because we're all human, so that's, you really, it's a give and take from everybody, and so that I think that's.
And with community policing, like, it's all about preventative maintenance. Right?
Yeah.
I've seen community policing work in the 90s where they would take some of the biggest, baddest guys in Olean who might have went out on a Friday night and absolutely knew that the officers were looking for them and absolutely knew that they did something wrong on a Friday night. Saturday, they're down there playing basketball. The guy walking the beat goes, "Come here, man. Can we talk about what happened yesterday? And I'm going to have to take you in for what you did," right?
Right.
And the biggest, baddest guys in Olean look at him and go, "Yeah, I know. We were out last night, lost my head."
Dude talked about my mom, just...
Yeah, I get it. There was a mutual respect amongst them and the officers, whereas if another officer who maybe may not have been assigned to that beat might have tried to have that same conversation, might have been a little different type of conversation just because he didn't have that personal relationship with them.
Sure.
And that's what I mean about the less conflict. The more respect you have for somebody, the less you're going to engage in an argument with them or try to disrespect them, right?
Right.
So that's kind of what it is. The baselines of kind of, now how we get there.
That's still like that's the biggest hurdle to me. So I think that like, okay, so you fund. So to go off of that, from what I'm hearing, we want more community policing, but we also want more accountability for the police department.
Yeah.
Right? So like when cops do step out of line, right? Like, hey, I'm going to do a favor for this guy because I have a personal relationship with him, but not that guy, right? And like so there has to be like that. We're drawing thinner lines, but at the same time, like we need an accountability committee, right?
Yep.
And that's the kind of goal. So what is like, and that's where I kind of get into like the devil's in the details, right? So you create a committee and it has no power, so now it's lip service.
Right.
But you create a committee and it has too much power. Now all of a sudden you got cops being fired, we're being sued by the unions. You know what I mean? Like, so it's trying to hone your sword, right?
The truth is somewhere in the middle,
right?
And you don't want to swing too far right, you don't want to swing too far left. You want to be in the middle somewhere. The pendulum wants to swing in the middle. And I understand what you're saying. I've seen enough committees set up throughout organizations and companies and cities that are very toothless. They're committees in name only.
Right. Yeah.
But then I've seen a lot that were really strong, and then I've seen a lot that actually did their job, got to work, got things done. So that's kind of where you want to be, is right there in the middle. So. And that's going to be the pull and tug. There's going to be some people that don't want to give up power. Yeah. There's going to be some people that want to take it all. So how do you get to the middle? And that's the conversation that we'll have, like, moving forward, is what are the guidelines, as we move this train down the tracks? What are the guidelines for each one of these committees, and what power do they have, and what do we want to see them have, and how do they work collaboratively with the Common Council? Right. And how do they work collaboratively with the departments? So sure, them are the things that we have to iron out. and we'll talk about the most pressing one here in a minute, is the diversity committee, which obviously is on the agenda for Tuesday, so that's the most pressing topic that we have. Right. So, but tell me about what your thought is on the county government being quiet, because every councilman or councilwoman that we've talked about, that I've talked to, we've always got into this question.
Where's
the county?
Yeah.
And as a local councilman, who basically, the county's up here over you,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they're kind of your boss, kind of not your boss, but
I should almost do a tutorial video series on this, because I always try to do a tutorial. I want to do a tutorial video on how to explain the water bills. There's so many people out on Facebook, arguing about all these different things and how it works, and you almost need to kind of go through the crash course motion of all of it. But
so you have elected officials that are in the county legislature.
Yep.
Here you guys are in Olean tackling probably one of the biggest issues that you'll tackle as a councilman and a councilwoman, right?
Sure.
And where are your fellow elected officials that are kind of like at the county level? I mean, how do you feel? Like they're quiet?
Because the accountability is quiet. You've got how many representatives? Like 20, 27, something
like that.
Some Democrat.
Yeah, one Democrat. Yep. The Republicans are in trouble this year because of the whole civil war that's going to happen. Because now all of a sudden everybody's on your team. Well, guess what? You have nobody to play against. So guess what? You fight amongst yourselves.
Yeah.
So they're in trouble in the first place. But at the same time, there's no accountability because you hear about how Congress goes into session for 8 hours and they're just arguing. Just 200 people raising their hands and wanting to talk and speak, and you start getting that big. I mean, it's easy just to get lost and just have nothing ever happen. And that's kind of what happens at a lower level with the county. And our county, our biggest problem with the county is that's where the Bill Aleo Science majority lives, right? Like these people that go to the grocery store twice a week in the middle of Franklinville. Maybe they don't live downtown Franklinville. They live out in Ishaway, and you know what I mean? Like these people hardly interact with their neighbors. Their neighbor's like 5 acres away, like
right.
It's not right next door. It's not, hey, I could hear them listening to music too loud. Like you couldn't hear them do shit. So, so those people go out and they vote party lines and they pick these people based on their, old white wholesome Christian values, and like you can almost kind of generalize a stereotype on how the county created its government. Oh, now you have Facebook calls.
Probably my mom.
Somebody really wants to comment. Hi, Mom.
Hey, we're back.
Oh. We're going to talk to your mom.
No, it wasn't. But it was actually my cousin Terrell who's going to shoot the video down there at 4 o'clock. But but we have local
local representation, right?
Representation at the county.
So in here,
and they're not really having your guys' back right now.
No, of course not, because they are at the county level. So local issues are local issues, and they bear the brunt on us. Right, like they sit on their Mount Olympus and let us weather the storm down here while they're above the clouds, right? So that's kind of where it falls in, and as long as they keep their mouths shut, no one's gonna provide retribution to them for not having an opinion and staying quiet. Like I've seen a lot of hashtags like "We Notice," like you know what I mean, like sending messages like that, writing letters, emailing them, talking to the paper about like, hey, we've heard Jack Diddley from the county. And like that's been my biggest problem, because guess what? The county is also like full of these Republican, white, Christian, this is it. Like when I was a kid, marijuana was illegal, and we will never ever legalize it, because if it was illegal when I was a kid, it must be very bad. And so you have that mentality. So if you imagine that mentality, like, oh no, when I was a kid, there was whites, there was blacks, and there was Chinese people in camps, right? Like that was kind of how they had it in their head, and they just lived their political lives that way. And if they can just keep their opinions to themselves and not open their mouths and get in trouble and not become a Ron DePolito, right? Like I open my mouth, speak my opinion, get my ass kicked, and you know what I mean? Like instead of just getting back up and saying, whoa, you know what? I learned a thing or two. I know where I've wronged, and you know what I mean? And getting over your stubbornness and stop being an obstacle and getting out of people's way. I think I don't know how you correct the county at that level.
we'll get to the county. The coalition will get to the county. Once we get to the point where we feel comfortable with the city, we will get to the county.
They're going to be a harder animal to tackle.
That's okay. There's nothing better than a challenge.
Okay.
But and I don't need to get to the county as a whole. What I do need to do is get to the county that represents the city of Olean and say, are you representing the city of Olean?
Yeah, and
Because
from an
that's your
elected
job.
from an elected official perspective, like this movement couldn't have happened at a worse time in perspective to how they just got elected.
Right.
Like they're 6 months, 7 months into it. Right. Like you've got another 3.5 years of them before you can actually shake shit up.
And I don't really name names, but I will in this instance.
Sure, drop them. I'm always dropping names.
But what I find interesting is Adriana. Her husband is the principal at Olean High, who is a very diverse high school. It's a diverse high school. Excuse me, which I'm proud of. We live in a very diverse city with a diverse high school. She's a county official. You would think that she would say, I love the diversity and I embrace the diversity just because of the community I live in, the position that my husband holds at the high school, and we embrace this type of diversity as long as it's done the right way, right?
Sure.
Put your guidelines on it or whatever you want to.
A political statement that covers her ass. At the same time, like she also probably couldn't come forward and just say, as a county representative who also is a state employee through the like her husband is, like they both work for the state board of ed. So like a lot of times, like they can't really open their mouths because it's we're in a litigious society. You open your mouth, you get your ass sued. You know what I mean?
Young, and she's young.
We're fired.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's about morals, right? We talk about how a lot of the Republicans around here go off their Christian values. Where are your morals in that instance?
Sure.
You know what I mean? I mean, if you're representing our city, like that's who you're representing, you can't bring something out. Saying,
bring something to the table.
Right. Then why are you there?
And I would expect that out of I'll say it, an old fat white man.
Right.
Right.
Sure. Yeah.
But out of a younger politician like Adriano, who's surrounded by diversity, you would expect her to take more of a
like proactive
type of movement on that, and that's okay. I mean, she doesn't have to. Ultimately, only she can answer for that. But but that's kind of the mentality that's up in the county right now, and I don't think that they've changed the way that they've done business in the past 60 years.
No, there's me and Kelly always used to just get into the weeds and argue because like I was the only vote that said you can't you should be able to smoke in a park, right? Like not hanging out near the playgrounds, like smoking near the kids, like flicking cigarette butts at them. I was the only one who voted against that because listen, it's a park. You're walking your dog, you're smoking a cigarette, dog takes a crap, you pick that up. Guess what? If you're picking up your dog crap, you're probably also snuffing out that cigarette butt and picking it up and putting it in the bag. You know what I mean? Like, and she's very like, nope, we're no smoking, and she was always toting that whole like that mentality that went through the school district, like smoking's evil, this is evil, that's evil, and like, but still holding on to those like I grew up in Pennsylvania and we are wholesome Christians, and if it wasn't in the Bible, it ain't happening. Like, and so like. Me and her always got like I was the one who was fighting the religion in this system. You know what I mean? Like
I can tell you a wholesome. There's some things that happened within the whole Colin Kaepernick era of kneeling and things like that happened in the Olean school district that I wouldn't necessarily call Christian based, and so we can get it. That's a conversation for me and her. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily hold on to them Christian-based values if you're not going to hold on to the Christian-based values all the way through. Right, kind of just pick and choose. Like
well, a lot of right now, that's what the whole churches are doing in the city. They're picking and choosing on their battles with this whole situation. Like you see, there's been pastors at the town halls meeting, Ty Hall and Pastor Wesley Gilbert. I think both of them were asked to be there.
by the mayor.
by the mayor. Where like I would see like why did he ask them two to come? Where like why not bring white people in if there wasn't if all lives matter, why weren't there white pastors there?
Right.
Or the Muslim.
Or the Muslims.
Yeah, right.
I mean, like, why they need a seat at the table too? But like, where do they stand on the
Like
whole
Reverend
separate-
Kim Rossi, just call her up, and she usually coordinates like all of the community spiritual leaders,
But-
whether they're rabbis or I'm drawing a blank on a pastor for a mosque, but
Yeah, but
you know what I mean.
Yeah,
But like the Sikhs, no, that's not it. No,
Yeah.
I don't know.
my verbiage is off.
I don't know.
But you know, I just
But
I
she
find it.
coordinates all those.
I don't know. I just think that like a lot of it is like the like church needs to be. I'll say it because I'll say it. I'm just gonna say it. The church has been absent, and they should be up there like how you were out on the side up front here. They need to be out there like handing waters out to protesters and be like, we know Jesus at the end of the day was with the oppressed people. He freed the slaves. He parted the sea for slaves. Like he would be with the oppressed right now, no matter what was going on. In church, they say, love the sinner, hate the sin. But where's the churches?
They pick.
I mean, and then they can come up with different opinions too. A lot of them flip flop of how they feel, and it's not okay. Like that kind of stuff. Like either you're with the movement or you're there's no being in the middle anymore. We're at the point where like we want things done. Like one day we can feel this way, the other day we can feel this way, but that's not okay anymore. We need to be like, this is where we stand, this is how we're going to do it, and this is the change we're going to come.
There's no Swiss.
No, there's no. Yeah.
I think we're to the point in the movement, which I think you understand, because you've kind of, as a councilman, have had to be there the whole way.
Right.
Where it's like, at this point, you're either riding with us or you're riding against us.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like there's no middle anymore.
There's no past on the road. Like,
Right.
You didn't just. I'm not just a
But-
street sign that got just
Yeah.
passed at the mile marker.
And at the beginning, I think, because it was so fresh and so new, and everybody was trying to figure it out, and everybody was trying to figure out where we were going, I think that's when people were getting passes, and rightfully so.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think that you're to the point now where it's put up or shut up, basically.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, the churches in the area. I mean, like they've picked a couple topics they want to talk about, right? Like you always one Sunday a month you'll catch a pile of people holding up signs that say like anti-abortion.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean, or something to that rhetoric. And that's like outside of church, it's the only time I really see St. Mary's. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. I think I was at church this morning, and Pastor Stanley Parks was in town from Florida, and he said it's time for the churches to like get out in their city. Like it's time. Like God is not going to just be in the four walls of your church. You need to go out there and be with the people that He was really with, and like make that move. I found that like an interesting subject that he brought to the table today. It was a good thing. Like that. It's so true though. Like we need to be with the people that really need it right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And actually making change. I think a lot of the problem in Olean is the unity in the churches aren't there. They never get along. So it's time for the churches in Olean to actually come together and set aside their beliefs. Well, not even their beliefs, bring their beliefs together, but like their differences, and like work together and help create change. I think that's what really needs to happen.
So I think that really comes. I think that really comes in full circle though with what your the concern is like with the county politicians are doing the same thing the churches are doing. Right. Like county politicians want to get reelected. Churches want people to go to them. And so if they start taking stances on things that might be one way or the other, they'll lose enrollmentship. And especially in these dying times where, I mean, kind of churches are on their way out in a lot of respects, like younger generations. I mean, we saw it at the town hall meeting. A lot of the younger people were like, no, churches don't like gay people. I don't want to be there. You know what I mean? Like,
I understand that whole, that's the whole thing. Like, I think that once you go into the community and you pick a side, you may lose a couple of people, but like, if you're really doing it out of the love in your heart, like,
you're going to bring more in.
You're going to bring more people than the old lady that's sitting in the back. Like, I can't believe you're saying this to these people. Like, at some point, it's not going to matter. Right. Like, he's going to provide more people for you if you're out in the community where there's there was hundreds of people sitting out there. Could you imagine the impact? Like, oh, like I thought churches hated people. Like, I thought they just like took your money, or like the church gets a bad name because they're not taking a side on things.
Exactly.
And they look at things so judgmental, and it's not it shouldn't be a judgmental thing. It should be like, hey, we're with you. I understand, but you always have to speak in truth. Like you can't, like at the end of the day, it's going to come down to the truth. Like you don't be a Bible thumper, but like at the end of the day, when you're having that conversation, speak in truth, show love.
Yeah,
that's all.
If you, I mean, like it's kind of like fishing, right? Like if you have a fridge half full of fish, that fish is going to go bad if you never go out fishing, because you're never going to replenish your stock.
Right.
Like you need to get out there in the community and start doing that. And I kind of see that. I was the one trying to shake it up originally. I got yelled at because I was trying to get the rabbi to come in and do it like a couple of years ago for the invocation, because I'm a big like separation of church and state. So I didn't think that a prayer was a place for there wasn't a place in the council meeting for prayer. With Pledge of Allegiance, right? That's our prayer for the government, right? That's kind of what it is. It's your patriotism, right? So I didn't think there was much of a placement. Every time I went, it was like sitting in church, right? Like, listen, I'm in government. I'm not in church right now. Like, let's pick where we are. So I said, I'm going to do the invocation. I couldn't get the rabbi, and I wanted to send the point home, and I picked the Pastafarians, and I probably should have picked like, Islam or something, you know what I mean? Like, because I picked the Pastafarians just to send the point home, and it was the wrong time. Like, it was because it was like Ladorna Fox was retiring from the zoning board. You had like a pile of old white people there, super Christian, and then it was the day that the most amount of government kids showed up from the school, and so like raw men, and that was kind of like but I was trying to drive the point home, and then finally Kelly Andriano went to the county, and I was like, listen, so I started giving, like actually driving my point home in a more systematic way, which was, okay, I'm going to do the prayer. And the prayer, in my eyes, the invoking speech would be like something that JFK would do, right? Like, ask not what your government can do for you, but what you can do for your government. And that's an invoking speech, not you know what I mean? Like, let the Lord all, amen. You know what I mean? Like, so I did that. And I was quoting from Lincoln and Reagan and all these other people, JFK, things like that, more political stuff, just to kind of keep it in times. And then the old stuffy white mare, like twist the arm of the council president, takes it away, so it's kind of a...
I gotta tell you, like, as far as the churches go, like my grandmother was one of the first African-American professors and taught black history at UB. UB. She was one of the first 3 ever hired. So we would talk a lot about this stuff, and she would always tell me, there's never been a revolution that's been successful without the church, right? So I believe that, but one thing that I believe in the city, and then we can get off the church topic, because it's really not what we're here talking about.
Right, yeah.
But
is derailed a little
but it's something like
is that the churches in Olean, they're so isolated in their own culture and their own way of doing things per church, that their system of the way that they do things and carry themselves and the way they treat other churches is just as broken as the system we're trying to fix. I would love to see them come together under the movement and say, we support these things in the movement, and come together as a church community to support that, rather than having all this segmented stuff. This church says this church says this church says this, and then the message itself gets all skewed and muddled, and nobody knows where the church stands on the situation. Where I watch some other pastors from the bigger cities and bigger churches, and man, they're all together. And they have one clear message. And you know exactly what that message is. You may not like it, but you know what it is. And that's okay too. But moving away from that, because that could be a whole 2-hour discussion. Is the Tuesday at the committee meeting, Paul put together the resolution for the support of the Black Lives Matter movement. Let's be clear, it was the movement that we supported. And in that was an amendment for a board, a diversity board, which gave the resolution teeth, Paul. I mean, so it gave it teeth, right? So it wasn't just lip service to everybody. And that's what we're going to really take up Tuesday is the diversity board. And I know you had said before about what power does the board have and how is all that going to be divvied out. What would you like to see the diversity board tackle in their realm of responsibilities? What's that look like to you? You have to vote on it.
So there's two boards, right? Because we're doing one. The mayor's required to do one for the police department as well, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, he doesn't have to.
Which they could be one and the same if he so chooses them.
Right. So a little into it. A committee that has all councilmen and the mayor on it can be chosen directly from the council.
Correct.
Any committee that has people that are from the community that aren't elected officials is considered a mayoral committee. So the mayor gets to pick and choose who's on those. Just to set that up, just because a lot of people don't know that rule.
But the common council can set a committee up as it so chooses.
But the mayor has to pick all the rest.
The mayor has to
people
pick the people, but the common council can say we want this committee.
With the parameters, yes. Yeah, we can set the parameters, correct. So I mean, if we have a diversity committee that is like reviewing different discrepancies with the city, different policies, different things, that's kind of what I'm kind of seeing that everybody's kind of looking for. And if there's, you know what I mean, we've got old laws. I mean, we've got more laws than we have days in the year to kind of review. And so if every year, if you know the political correctness of certain things, like I know you mentioned. Some of the police policies refer to he more often. Yeah, I mean, because they probably haven't reviewed in 100 years. A lot of even just changing some pronouns, you know what I mean, might correct the solution on that. But then, you know, hey, like I mentioned to you, the noise ordinance in the city is literally limited to you cannot play advertisements from the horns of a vehicle after a certain time of night. You know what I mean, like that. So I mean,
we got a lot of that going on.
Yeah, well, yeah, we have tons of Blues Brothers driving around just blaring, you know, and stuff like that. I mean, so you go through and review certain laws and things like that, and make sure that they're with the times, right? Like you can't cross the street with an ice cream in your left back pocket. You know what I mean? You ever heard that old Kentucky rule? Like you get arrested, it's a misdemeanor or something like that.
And
like,
I look at that committee as a committee to help the city and help you guys. If you allow that committee to maybe look at your policies from a diversity standpoint, right? Like we talked about, and make sure that there's not things in there that are exclusionary in nature, not by anybody's intent, but just by the nature of how they may have been written and nobody looked at them, right? And also your hiring practices, right? If you go to hire for a position, I think that diversity committee can look at them applicants and say, yeah, you have 6 applicants, but none of them, they're not diverse. Like, what was how did you reach out to a wider audience to try to get a more diverse, to try to get a more diverse pool of applicants, right?
So the police department probably would be the easiest example on this, because a lot of the guys, if you're just living in Olean and you qualified to be a police officer. I mean, they put the advertisement on the city website, right? That there's an opening. But a lot of times, like, the police chief doesn't know, if you show up in that mailbox of people that email your resume in and say, listen, I'm qualified, blah, blah, blah. I mean, for the most part, if there's nothing in that inbox, chief's going to go after all the recent graduates, or I think there's also probably a state like those message boards you see at Dresser Rand, right? There's an in-house thing amongst officers that are currently holding position that are looking to transfer, right? And so talking with the police chief this past week, actually, he goes, listen, I go to all the recent candidates, people that are applying for transfers, things like that, and he says, I try to hire women. I try to hire African Americans. I try to hire Asians. I try to hire everybody. You know who doesn't want to come here? Like, nobody wants to come here because our police force is not the most paid in the county anymore. It's not the most paid in the
I understand
state.
that, but like that, is that like the major issue?
It's not one of the major issues.
You know what I mean? I mean, I think that
if you went,
I think it's the issue that like we only go to that one place. Like we could look all over the country if that was the case, like to see those pools. Like it's not only like we're only going to one place to look for candidates that are looking to be transferred and doing that, or people that are qualified in the city. Because if we look at it that way, like not enough African American people or like minorities are taking the test, the civil service test. So I think that the whole like the search of like diversity needs to change.
Right. But and I think that's where that diversity committee can come in and say, okay, so
what are your practices?
How are we reaching out?
Right. So I mean, you could probably hit a wider scale,
right.
Maybe because if somebody's getting out of the police academy in like, Nebraska, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe they don't meet the same requirements that the state of New York does, or maybe we find one that has some reciprocity, right?
Right.
Like if you ever had a gun permit, like your reciprocity means you can take it from state to state because they share that common whatever. But so if you go to those different states and you say, listen, you know what I mean? We're hiring way more than most people in your area.
Mm-hmm.
Now you've got to ask them to move out of their state to come to us. Now, if you can get them here, that's great, because even the chief said, he goes, I would love to have it. He goes, a diverse police force, doesn't matter if you have 5 cops on the force or 100. He goes, if you get a diversity of everybody, he goes, it just makes for like the same way with the community policing. It reminds the cops that they're doing it.
Did you talk to him about the community policing?
I didn't know, because we didn't talk about that. We were talking about the hiring practices.
Yeah.
So that was on the agenda for me and him that day.
And when I look at the hiring practices, I think to say that people don't want to come to the city of Olean, no. I mean, who's selling it? What are we saying? Is there a better way to do it? People graduate from the police academy right up around Chautauqua County area all the time, and I know we look there. Are we looking there? Are we looking in other places? And it's just questions that the diversity board can ask,
sure,
just to ensure that we're doing everything that we can to, and people get it confused. Like they're like, oh, you just want to hire minorities, and so no. What you need is a diverse interview group. And then you take the best candidate from that interview group, right?
Sure.
So really,
or maybe point out something that's wrong with the system and make recommendations to like the Common Council, like,
right.
Hey, listen, we're not hiring cops at a high enough salary, or we're not doing a wide enough scan,
right.
And you create a resolution that would force the ability to do that, to at least make the attempt, right, to draw in a more diverse candidate, right? Like
we can't bring somebody to Olean kicking and screaming.
Right, no, and you also don't want to be saying, listen, if you're a minority candidate, we want to hire you at 1.5 times somebody else, because now all of a sudden you got a bunch of white officers going, well, why is he better than me? Right. You know what I mean? Like you're trying to also make sure that everybody understands it's a level playing field.
The hiring salaries are the hiring salaries, no matter what they are, right? But I think if you broaden your search a little bit, maybe you can bring a little bit more of that diversity back into the city. And since I'm done with my regular questions, we can get into this. But I'm a firm believer in I've traveled, and one of the best places that I travel a lot is Florida, and I have an opportunity to listen to a lot of people that live in Florida, and they have a very strong mentor program out there, and it keeps them very diverse. If a freshman in high school, and you can tell me what your thoughts are on this.
Sure.
If a freshman in high school shows interest in becoming an officer, a fireman, a city clerk, a councilman, whatever.
Sure.
That city parks department, street department, things like that. What they do is they hook that student up one-on-one. It's either a minority candidate or a poor candidate, and they consider poor candidates anybody who gets free reduced lunch, so on and so forth. How basic America looks at a
we need to hire more cops.
So Emma, I don't even know where that is. But so what they do is and I'm going to talk while I make sure we're recording. Is they hook that student up one-on-one with somebody who works in that field, right?
Sure. It's a like a career-oriented internship. It was like Bonnet Buddies.
Yeah, but for 1
like,
hour a
careers.
day,
Right.
1 hour a day, the person that's mentoring that kid is mandated to either meet with that kid face to face or via phone all the way up until the point at which they graduate, right? And their senior year is solely based on test preparation meeting, and it's only for an hour. So, like, if I'm the mentor and Ezra's my student, I'm only investing an hour a week into him. You know,
It's a lot of investment.
but did you
I mean, that is. I mean, like.
but this week, you know, did you? How are your grades? How are your classes? That freshman year, that sophomore year, same thing. That junior year, are you going to college? And let's say you want to become an officer. Are you taking your intro to criminal justice? Are you doing this? And how are you doing? And how can I help you? So on and so forth. And that senior year, it's solely based on your examination prep. Like, how are you studying for your civil service? What areas are you struggling in? Can we help? You know, so on and so forth. It gets better. So,
Okay.
and then depending on the size of the community, some cities are bigger than other cities. They pick a certain number of kids based off essays. So the kids have to do something. They have to write an essay at the end, explain why they want to be in that field, explain why they believe they would be an asset to the city, so on and so forth. And a panel of people pick, let's say the city decides that they're going to sponsor one kid a year to go to the academy, right? Out of that pool of mentors, right? They'll pay for that kid to go to the police academy, and in exchange, that kid's got to come back and work for the city for 3 to 5 years, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
So
My little
what?
brother just deported over to Afghanistan, so I mean, like they paid for his master's degree, and in turn he gave the government his life for 5 to 10 years.
And
so.
they do the same thing with the fire department. So let's say you had 6 firefighters retiring this year. They might take that pool of applicants and go, I'm going to take 6 of these guys, right? And we're going to send them to whatever schooling they need to go to, and then we're going to hire them out. And then that mentor that worked with that individual is also that person's training officer for like the first however long they have to train. So it's a relationship that's built over time.
Sure.
And it's a relationship that holds both people accountable, but it also keeps your young people in the city, right?
Right.
That's what we're talking about. And it keeps your city diverse, right?
Yeah.
Because if I know that, let's say our fire department is losing 2 African American firefighters this year, guess what? Out of that pool, I want to make sure I at least have 1, right? That we're going to sponsor through their training or whatever, because we want to stay diverse. Or if we're going to lose 3, Caucasian firefighters, I'm going to want to make sure that out of that group of poor individuals that I have at least 2, Caucasian
Sure.
individuals. So to keep the departments diverse and level, costs a little bit of money, but you keep your young people home.
Sure. Yeah.
You keep your departments diverse. It takes 4 years for the process to unfold, but nothing happens overnight. And it holds the people mentoring responsible and the people being mentored responsible. What would be your thought on something like that?
I would be all for that. One of my really good friends is he owns Flanagan Farms in Hinsdale, and he goes to the farmers market every week, and he wrote essay upon essay about why we need to stop sending our kids to college to go live somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like he said, he goes, all these kids want to move to college so they can get a good job somewhere else, away from home. And he goes, what's to say that like they can't start a business here, work somewhere here, and that's his big thing. And I think that's a great idea. It allows for your diversity candidates to actually move their way up. Gives kids that might not ordinarily think about it, right? Like, like why, I'm in a low income house. I'm not gonna be able to afford college. I don't, maybe I don't have the skill set my dad had. He was a good carpenter. I suck at carpentry, and now I'm stuck working at KFC.
Right.
I'm like, and now all of a sudden you're just a stereotype. Like, yep, just statistic. Yeah, yeah.
I look at somebody, and I use this guy's name quite often just because I just love him. Ivan. You look at somebody like Ivan that works for the city, right? He's
Think
out.
so?
Yeah, he's out there, right?
Yeah.
Like he's out there. He's interacting with people all day long.
He pulled up when we were out here and he hugged Della, and Della was freaking out because she's wearing her mask. She goes into 14-day quarantine anytime she goes to a restaurant that somebody does have a mask around their nose.
For somebody like Ivan to walk into a school and look at a young kid and go, I'm your mentor for the next 4 years, and you're gonna. What's Ivan work for the streets, right?
Yeah.
And because I heard you want to work for the street department, so me and you, we're gonna hook up. You're gonna talk to me once a week. We're gonna go hang out in the summer times. You're gonna come and work for me. You know, we're gonna make sure that this is where you want to be.
Yeah.
Ivan can sell anything to anybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Catch a popsicle to a lady in white gloves.
And so, like, you look at that, and what a great opportunity for him to do something he loves. And what a great opportunity for a kid to learn.
To see somebody so passionate about what they do, and to find that passion where maybe you didn't see it, like, oh, streets, digging ditches, filling potholes, that sounds dumb. No, Ivan gets to deal with fun, heavy equipment. He gets to drive a truck around all day, you know, and so, I mean, like you said earlier, like, an hour a week doesn't seem like a lot, but that's quite an investment in a lot of kids, especially from, like, poor and diverse families. Like, a lot of those kids don't get to see their dad at all. So, like, 1 hour a week of a father or a mother figure, you know what I mean, that maybe they don't ordinarily get because their mom works 80 hours because dad's in jail, or, you know what I mean, mom left and dad's raising you and he's got to work all the time and you hardly see your dad, and now you got this other adult figure out there creating whatever role is missing from this child's life. I think it's an amazing idea. Yeah, it's all about the youth. You know what I mean?
And it's about the youth, and it's about the community, and it's about keeping our young kids at home.
It's building.
Yeah.
And building that homegrown talent. You know, and because it's here.
It's here. This is the soil that the plants grow in that we eat. That's you know what I mean? We shit in that soil. Like we grow them plants. That's us.
We have so much talent in the Olean City High School. It just leaves.
Yeah.
It just leaves. When it graduates, it leaves. And
small town bullshit is what they all
we
say.
got to find a way.
Bigger and brighter, greener pastures. Like, listen, I tell all my friends all the time, like, they all want to leave. Hey, man, I've been here forever. Like, the ones that take forever to leave, they finally leave at like 30. And you're like, listen, man, I've been around. I know. You can go to Buffalo. You can go to, you know, Wichita, Kansas. Like, you're going to find the same green grass there as you will here. You're going to notice that, hey, you were prepared to handle the cold, maybe not the heat. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to find the same bullshit, the same people talking smack, the same stuff that stresses you out in life is going to follow you wherever you go. And to kind of dip into, like, what Pastor Gilbert says, you know, like, I mean, sometimes you do have to kind of modify yourself a little bit, because if you're leaving Olean because it's stressful, guess what? That stress is going to follow you wherever you go, because it's how you handle shit.
Right.
But, you know.
But I think, you know, keeping our local talent here at every cost is unbelievable. If we could do that, the community would grow. It'd be unbelievable. We lose so much talent every year. The people that are highly successful in other places, you know, that have been grown right here.
Yeah.
So,
the greatest per or what is it? Our GDP, not our GDP. What's our gross domestic product? Yeah, our GDP. Our gross domestic product is the kids we send out other places.
Yeah, and
to make them money.
So when I look at a diversity committee, like, them are a couple things that I think that they can work on, and I think that they can take on, and that's just a couple, and there's probably 100 more. But even as far as, like, equal opportunity employment, you know, it's got to be bigger than a little 2x4 you put on the 2x4 ad you put on the bottom of the application.
The guy talks real fast.
Yeah, it has to be something where you can say, you know what, we're really an equal opportunity employer, and we have a diversity committee that sits here that reviews all this stuff. So, you know, like, we believe in what we're saying, right?
Right.
And that's why you see a lot of corporations. I come from the corporate world. A lot of corporations, diversity committees are standard operating procedure for them. A lot of cities have diversity committees. It's to ensure that they're taking that pressure off of that CEO, you know?
Yeah.
Where somebody may look at them and say, we're going to sue you because you're not diverse. Well, what do you mean? We have a whole diversity committee, and they just reviewed everything. So,
body cams on an officer kind of thing. Yeah. Like,
so
there's a lot of those things that are just, they're good things in the fact that, yeah, you've got to get the, I think that taking the weight, like, so a lot of time, like, I'm not trying to shirk responsibility either. Like, a diversity committee can do way more because it's a group that's focused specifically on something, right? Like, I get so many things thrown my way as a councilman. It's like, listen, I can't focus on every pothole. You know what I mean? But I get a lot of pothole calls. And then budget season comes, and thank God this year was pretty light for potholes or for budgets, because we wanted to make sure it was nice and easy. We didn't know what's going to happen with the Rona and everything else, so like this was easy. But like I've been on the council for 4 budget seasons, and there's been seasons where we're there Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, like 4 or 5 days a week at like 4 hours a night. Like the missus hates it because like I'm not home for like a week, sometimes 2 weeks during budget season, because we do department heads give all their spiels. Then you start looking through the numbers, and you know what budgets are like.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, it's a brutal task. And a lot of people don't get that. They're like, "Oh, the common council passes that budget." You know what I mean? Like, well, we do, but we can't. We can only make suggestions to it, like the committee, like the diversity committee could. You know what I mean? Like, if the mayor comes back and doesn't make the changes we recommend, he says, "No, you can sit on it." You know what I mean? And we've got to either pass it or fail it. And if we fail a budget, that means we're operating. Well, there's no you operate off of last year's budget. No, we operate off of. Contingency budget, which essentially pays like 4 policemen, 2 firemen, and like a clerk and a lady answering phones at dispatch. Like we go to
bare bones.
We go to bare bones, and guess who looks like the apocalyptos? You know what I mean? The guys that are just trying to burn down the society. Makes it look like us. You know what I mean? Like we don't ever want to hold the mayor to that fire. A lot of times we get close. Try to remind him of the heat, but we also look like the assholes because listen, like we didn't pass the budget, but you know what I mean, like, and so there's a lot of that stuff, and it's politics is so goddamn convoluted. Like you wish it was cut and dry, nice and easy, like
yeah.
And obviously the other committee that we as the ORJC believe that the city needs is the community review board committee,
sure,
which a lot of cities have, and
so what does that committee do?
That committee will review citizens' complaints.
Okay. So instead of like,
let's say an officer decided that he was going to give somebody a ticket because they were riding their bike on the sidewalk downtown instead of the bike lane, right?
Right.
Something real simple like that. Let's keep it simple. And that citizen called up and said, I was riding my bike on the sidewalk. Yeah, I was wrong, but this officer put their hands on me and pushed me off my bike or something like that. Or
gave me a ticket when he didn't give the other white kid a ticket, right? Or something, yeah.
So that would come to the Citizens Review Board, and they would say, obviously request, well, give me the body cam footage from the officer, right?
Right.
Review that, say, yeah, the cop was perfectly respectful to me, from policy and procedure wise and how I perceive that. It was respectful. And, the things that you're saying aren't on here, and we don't know where that's coming from. And
right.
you're just trying to get out of a ticket, basically.
Sure.
So the Citizens Review Board would get back to
the guy that gets arrested by a cop, and then when he goes to court, he's in like a body cast,
So the Citizens Review Board would go there and go back to that person and say, give them written confirmation, based upon our review of your complaint, we found your complaint to be,
X, Y, or Z, founded or unfounded or whatever.
And here's the reason why, it's something like that. And obviously, it could go went the other way too, and we could just say, yeah, it was founded and, whatever, and then you pass that on to the police union or the police chief or whoever and say, hey, look, we found that the officer may have been a little bit out of line here. You need to put that into your disciplinary process, wherever he's at now, right? We can't say to somebody, you got to fire Ezra Johnson. But what we can say is, wherever Ezra's at in his disciplinary process, here's another thing that he did wrong. Now, I don't know if that's Ezra's last warning. I don't know if it's his first warning. You know what I mean?
Right, but it ain't helping him.
So, whatever he did, and here's the review, and here's why we found that.
Right.
And if we obviously say to the police department, if you need any further discussion on that, please come to the board. The board meeting on this particular day, we're talking. I'll tell you what we found. But it's not that.
There should be some checks and balances on your side, though. So, like, you guys pass this. Let's say you pass it on to the police chief, right?
Yeah,
and it sits on his desk and nothing happens.
No,
right?
he would have.
Like, you should get some kind of a signed confirmation, or pass it to the council, for example, because they're elected officials, and it's easy to put their asses in the put their asses right in the fire and watch the media rip them apart for not jumping on a recommendation from that
Right.
council.
I mean, we would obviously look for some sort of confirmation back to the committee for however that, whether it was the council, whether it was the department head, or however that committee was
Sure.
set up to report, to say, yeah, we received it, yes, we agree,
And
yes, we received it, no, we don't agree, can you put this on the agenda for the next committee?
sure, some sort of a checks and balances, make sure
Right.
shit's actually happening, because
Right.
you put a post-it on the chief's desk, or, you know, on
Sure.
somebody else's desk, and,
So, you know,
like,
we would look for that feedback of, because we would also look for that feedback on the way of, yes, if you don't agree, then you're gonna come to the next meeting, and we
Right.
have to be prepared for that.
right, but yeah, because you guys did something, and maybe, you know what I mean, like, maybe there was an oversight. No, like, listen, like, see that hand right there? This was the cop's hand. This
Right.
was the guy's hand. You know what I mean? And there was like some kind of body cam altercation where, you know what I mean, you start getting fingers mixed, and you know what I mean. Like, I've seen some of those where it looks like the cop's punching them, and it's like literally, no, it's another cop grabbing this guy's shoulder from two different angles, but the body cam caught one hand.
Or it literally could be as simple as, you know, you guys reviewed this particular procedure to make your recommendation, but you missed this procedure that justified what was going on. And that would open up a relook at that whole incident, right?
Right, yeah.
So it's things like that you just want to get it right.
Sure.
You don't want to do a gut shot movie. You want to get it right. So you need that two-way dialogue.
Right.
Right. With whoever, whether that's the council, whether that's the department head, or however that committee's set up to report. Right.
Yeah.
So I think the community, and I also think that the community review board obviously would look at anything that was believed to be out of line from a city official, from an elected official, from anything that was looked upon as a possible crime, a possible violation of their oath, a possible violation of, they would be able to look at that and give a community
Above and beyond just race, right?
yeah,
Like,
above and beyond just race.
right, yeah.
Just, I mean, because they could possibly deal with complaints of, you know,
a certain alderman that may or may not have smoked marijuana on
or
YouTube.
or they could deal with
Just throwing
complaints
it out
of they could deal with complaints of, we have a landlord out here who has 6 ran down properties, and we have 25 people that are complaining about that, right?
Yeah, and now what's the process we can go through to
Right.
get this handled? Because maybe they're switching them from apartment to apartment without fixing the lead
So-
abatement problem, or
So maybe
cockroaches, or
So maybe maybe that community review board goes out and looks at them properties, comes back to the common council or whoever and makes a recommendation. Yeah, these properties are terrible. You guys need to take a look at these particular properties. They look absolutely terrible. Obviously, you guys would be able to take that and go to your
I've walked through a
zoning
few.
board. So, you know, things like that. So it's them type of things that I think your community review board would, and it is open and transparent. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So there's that communication to the person making the complaint. There's also that communication to the departments and the common council and everybody else. So it's transparent. It's open.
Yeah.
So that's kind of that next level board that probably needs to go into place in the city. Keeps everybody honest, right?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. You gotta keep them honest. Politicians, that's like,
Well-
that's not in their blood, you know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
you get a lot of people complaining too, and they just, maybe their complaints just aren't valid.
yeah, oh, yeah.
So,
Kind of, it's a checks and balances, keeps both sides. I can't wait till you have Paul Gonzalez on here,
why is that?
because I don't think you're gonna get him.
Why not?
Because I've never seen Paul in an interview with anybody. The Times Herald once. So there's my challenge to you guys.
You hear that, You hear that, Paul?
Does he watch?
Gave you a chance.
I don't know if he watches.
Does Bill?
What's that?
Bill watch?
Bill might. Bill. If you fart on YouTube and it blows Bill's way, you'll see a press release from the city. Bill overreacts to Facebook.
So Tuesday's the day that we're gonna vote on. I'm not asking you to tell us which way we're gonna vote. It is.
Depends on how Paul structures it. I mean, I think he's going to release it as a discussion for Tuesday,
Really?
unless he has a resolution written. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what he's going to have.
I asked him.
Well,
I asked him to put it on the agenda.
That was what the thing was.
I asked him to
That's what
put
he
it
said.
on
He
the
said he would do
agenda for implementation. So
We'll see.
we'll see. So
Give me a second. I can pull it up right now. They would have sent me the agendas on Friday for this coming Tuesday. And Council Committee meeting, please be advised, Strategic Planning Committee, and give me 1 second. Referrals for consideration, discussion items, live streaming the City Council meetings, Alderman Crawford. I've been fighting for that for years. That's why
That makes sense.
That's why I do this, though. You know what I mean? Like, I've been doing this because I couldn't do the live streaming, and the local community company wanted to charge $10,000, and there was another company that was going to do it for like $2,000. And I was like, I mean,
You can do it yourself.
I said, you guys can do it yourself for like $1,000. I mean, we've got all the equipment, and nobody wanted to listen to me, and Bill and all those guys. They hated it the moment I started bringing that camera.
Well, because it holds them accountable.
Oh, yeah, it does. They're like, they hate it. They hate it. And then they finally just kind of got used to it. Now you just like, me and Linda don't get along that well, but Linda, every time the camera's on, she'll talk right to it and give a speech, like as if the rest of the world is watching. So it's kind of funny because you watch them act differently when the camera's on. And Bill is always constantly, is your camera on? Well, I see a light. Like, well, yeah, it's not blinking, Bill. I see the red light, that means it's charging, and the blinking light is on, but it's not on. But they don't trust technology. Long-term city infrastructure plan, Crawford. Reform committee, Gonzalez, and these are new referrals, so these are discussion items. Okay. So there's not a PL, but we can, as the discussion unfolds, like it can create, I make a motion to, you know what I mean, to refer out of committee. Paul, in the meeting, can make a PL. Most of the time you submit a PL afterwards so it can be advertised and then it's referred to a committee, and then Paul's the one who gets to pick where it goes. So a lot of times he'll refer this right to the committee of the whole, right before the common council meeting, or he can directly refer it. He's got that power as the president. He can refer it right to.
Well, we'll be there to see how it goes. It needs to move. It needs to move.
But like I said, like the political bullshit, like all those little stupid infrastructure rules, and a lot of them are there for reasons, but at the same time, like a lot of them can be used to circumvent issues.
I would have thought that he would add a PL for that already.
I mean, because I don't know if he wants, because a lot of times a PL is proposed legislation. It's got to actually, you don't want to propose and write something, submit it to the paper if you don't have all the ideas down. And you just like, we're going to create this committee.
He did that with the resolution.
But he had it all wrote out. He wrote it all out and it said everything he wanted.
We gave him like a week to do it.
And then we still ended up editing a few things from it before it was voted on that night.
Yeah.
So, but you don't want to change. You can say, I'm going to submit this dog licensing law, and then you change all the guts from it to completely just refer to only cats, right? Like you could do that right on the spot, but people showing up to the common council meeting because they read it in the paper might not see that it's been completely revamped because it needs 2 weeks to.
Yeah. So I can see that. I can see where he would do that.
Just make it a discussion item, figure out what he wants. We all kind of sit down and hash it out, and then we refer it. He submits a PL the following week.
Yeah, it works.
So with that, like, tell me. And this kind of is how we'll close things up because I know we
got
to keep these
5 minutes.
Keep these to an hour. So,
we really do.
Tell me, like
5 minutes
before 5.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, it's 11 to 5. But yeah, you got to get that. You got
to go. Tell me what you would 5 years from now. How would you like to see Olean look based on all these changes? If you had your rosy red glasses on and everything worked out exactly like you wanted it to.
Rosy red glasses. I'm assuming it's 1970s again, and there's community policing, right? Like
1990, there was community policing.
Yeah, I mean I would like to see that. Other than like you said, like the cops throwing out like free Slurpee coupons every so often to plug the local box grocery store, right? Like the box bodega, right? That's what I call it because they're a box store, but they're on every corner.
Yeah.
So, I would like to see that. The community diversity board makes a lot of sense because I mean, at least it's vetting people's emotions out. Like, oh no, he pulled me over because I was black. Like, did he? Because this new hire we just hired, he's black. Why would he pull you over because you're black? Because you're the same color? Is that why you know what I mean? Like you kind of vetting some of that stuff out.
Yeah.
Or you vet out somebody that maybe he's been on the force forever or been in the fire department forever or been on the streets department forever and he just has deep-seated hate. He's from one of them backwoods places, like 6 counties over in Pennsylvania, and he just like he grew up on a farm where they all wear sheets at night. You know what I mean? Like, hey, we found you, we got you. Not appropriate in our community. Get the hell out. You know what I mean? Like, So, next 5 years. Hey, if you can make it happen in 5 years, that's the problem. Is like local government. Like, you really got to keep people's feet to the fire.
I'm not a patient man.
I know that. I know that. You screamed at Paul. Hey, Paul, it's been 4 weeks, Paul. It's been 4 weeks, Paul. Where's my PL? Like, still not a PL, by the way.
You know, I'm not a patient man. I like to see action.
Sure.
So, you know, hopefully, you know.
But you got to also sit down and talk about it. So there's got to be some kind of middle ground between patience and.
So I'm being patient as I can.
Yeah. But I mean, you fire from the hip. That's why they're, hey, you can wear masks at a bar because everyone's pissed that they can't go in a restaurant and sit down. Now all of a sudden, like, apparently we've taught Rona to sit right there patiently, like Tiger Middaw's dog at Reed's Food Barn, sits patiently out front, doesn't even look at people, and then
Tiger Midaw, I can't, I'm done.
And then you stand up and you walk out. You know, you stand up and you put the mask back on, and Rona hops back in your mouth, and you go on your way. Like, you know, that's you don't want it to be nonsensical laws, right? You want it to be legitimate and make sense, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So.
I think with that, I try to, you know, keep it as short as I can, and obviously we have great conversations, so we go way over time. And like I said, I'm never a time guy, so I always go over my time. But with that,
Ezra's keeping you on point.
I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate you guys getting a chance to know Councilman Doherty and more, you know, from a perspective more than just sitting at a council meeting and voting on legislation, but more getting to know him as a person. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. And he gave us a challenge to get Paul Gonzalez on here, and hey, Paul, I'm coming for you. So that will happen. Probably won't get the Palato, but I might be able to get Gonzalez.
Panis.
Panis
Yeah,
is coming.
We get Panis.
Panis is coming.
He wants you to call him. That was his big thing. He's like, if he doesn't call me, I'm not going to go. Like that's
I
it.
tried
Like,
to call him once, he didn't answer his phone, and then I'm a busy man, so
he works in the oil fields. Like half the time, he's out there like no service and stuff like that. So he was like he sent us an email saying he wasn't going to be at the last one or this past one for the town halls, and then like he's going to be not at next week's council meeting.
Panis, you're on my list.
Which sucks because he didn't know about he wasn't there last Thursday to know that there's a discussion item coming up. So
Panis, you're on my list. I'll get you. We'll get you in there. But with that, we're gonna close it up. You got any last words you want to tell everybody out there? Are you okay? Or
be kind and listen. I mean, because at the same time, if you're listening, I mean, like I sit at those town hall meetings and try not to open my mouth too much because everyone's venting at me. If I open my mouth, now we're not having a dialogue, we're having an argument. You know what I mean? And it becomes into a pissing match. And nobody wants a pissing match. You don't get anything done.
Right.
It's like a dick measuring contest. Like you just don't, nothing happens from it. Like you want a nice dialogue back and forth. You want to have some discussion. You want to figure out where's this person coming from? Where's this person coming from? Where's our ultimate goal? Maybe the goal is, like patterning darts on a dartboard. Maybe they're close.
Right.
And we try to narrow it down to the bullseye. So, but.
Awesome.
All right, guys.
So we're about action, guys, and this is action, and this is a great conversation, and this is how you guys get action, and how you guys come up with middle ground
And
solution.
vote.
And vote. Don't forget to register. I've got a pile of registration forms if you guys need them. So.
Yes, like I tell you guys all the time, if you are not registered to vote, email Leo. We will get you registered. We have a group of people whose job is to do nothing but register people to vote. Register to vote. We got your back. With that, we're going to another meeting. We're out.
Gotta go.
Peace. Next time. Not bad.